Kia ora tātou. Is this on? Hello? Okay. So welcome everybody. My name's David Hutchinson. I have two hats that I'm wearing tonight. One is the director of the Dob Walls Centre for Photonic and Quantum Technologies, which has an interest in educational outreach. But the one that's more relevant is I'm also the deputy chair of the board of the Otago Museum. So it's an absolute pleasure to welcome you here into this wonderful space. As some of you will know, next year is the 150th anniversary of the Otago Museum, so we're very proud that we're actually 1 year older than the university. But I don't want us at all to look back, because everything about tonight is about looking forward. And I think museums are one of the archetypical places where people come for informal learning. I think they have a huge role to play in society still, and the role of museums is an ever-changing one. We've seen that over the past 20 years in the Otago Museum, where we've gone from what was perhaps a very traditional museum to one that has become an incredibly welcoming space. And we've done that through various initiatives, and one of them was the Discovery World next door. As you'll have seen, that's all boarded up now. We decided that enough was enough, and so we've decided to get rid of all that. For those of you who love that space, though, and have been dragged through it by kids or just gone there through your own initiative, the butterflies will be back next month, and together with that will be a wonderful new redeveloped the Tuhuru Otago Community Trust Science Centre. Just wanted to make sure I got the name right. And so that will be opening in December, and there'll be a wonderful new space there with wonderful new interactives, and a whole new generation, or several generations to come, will have an opportunity to enjoy a real state-of-the-art science centre here in Dunedin. I think just about every school kid in Otago has at some point gone through Discovery World, and so I'm looking forward to the next generation coming through. But that's not the only initiative here. If we look to my left, your right here, we also have the Perpetual Guardian Planetarium, and I'm very glad to see Andrew Barnes and his partner Charlotte right here now, in front of me, who've been so supportive of that initiative. And so, and then to look around us, we're also in this beautiful science gallery, which really is a very flexible, formatted place in which we can explore many different ideas. And I see lots of Peter Dearden's Lab in a Box around the walls at the moment, and lots of images of kids enjoying the outreach that goes on through the museum across the entirety of, well, the South Island, and now Lab in a Box is in the North Island, in fact. So our outreach across the entire country. In fact, I went away with one of the Otago Museum groups to the Chatham Islands recently, and we had an action-packed time there over 5 days, seeing every single school child on the Chatham Islands, which was also wonderful. So the other thing highlighted by these screens are the numerous Unlocking Curious Minds projects that we're in partnership with. And so I think it's been a wonderful initiative, and we really have a wonderful team at the museum that I thank for all of the efforts of getting involved. In particular, Craig Grant, who I think wrote or co-wrote 9 Unlocking Curious Minds applications for the last round. So he really goes above and beyond there. But anyway, you didn't come here to listen to me, so I'm going to shut up, and I'm going to invite Victoria Metcalf from the Office of the Prime Minister's Chief Science Advisor to chair the rest of the session, and I'm going to sit down with all of you and enjoy this wonderful evening. So thank you very much.
Thank you very much, David, and wonderful to see so many people here tonight, and thank you to Ian for hosting us all and his team from the Otago Museum. What a fantastic space to have this discussion and debate. So I think it's really timely that Ian came up with this wonderful idea to discuss the future of science engagement by 5 plus me practitioners this evening. We're into a new era, I think, in terms of science engagement across the world, around the world, and particularly in New Zealand. And we've also got a new government just in place. So there's plenty of food for thought in terms of where we go next. And some of the things that might come up in tonight's discussion are how we better incorporate culturalism, the role that national initiatives, such as the one that I'm involved in, play as perhaps a platform on which other opportunities and initiatives can hook and leverage. And also we need to think about the time that we're currently in. So we're very much in a space or a time of a lot of wicked problems, as are known around the world. So some really pressing issues facing us and the rest of the globe. And so I think this affords us both challenges and opportunities for science engagement, and I'm really hoping that the rest of the panel touch on those this evening. So in terms of the format for how we'll proceed, we're going to let each speaker introduce themselves, and they're going to give a few minutes thought on their background into science engagement and their thoughts about where it might go in the future. And we're going to move from left to right, starting with Michelle in a second. And they're going to speak for about 5 minutes or so. And then we're going to finish up with a brief introduction from me and my background before I ask a couple of questions of the panel to kick things going. And then we really hope that you as an audience will get engaged, and we'll offer at least 45 plus minutes for discussion from you. And also I believe that we have a Twitter feed going and a hashtag going, and so we welcome questions from those who are watching the live stream or the Twitter feed as well. That can come to me and I can ask those questions of the panel. So without any further ado, I would like to introduce Michelle Dickinson, otherwise known by many as Nanogirl. And she probably needs no introduction because she's not only won the New Zealand been awarded the New Zealand Order of Merit, but she's won numerous science communication prizes, including the Prime Minister's Science Communication Prize. So over to Michelle.
Thank you. Stand up here. Thank you so much for having me. It's really exciting. I'm very excited. And thank you so much for hosting, Ian. Victoria said, you've got 5 minutes. And I'm like, oh, I could talk about science engagement all day. So she said, here's a couple of questions that I'm going to ask you. So what I did is I took her questions, and that's going to be my 5 minutes, because hopefully that's going to get some points across. So the first question she said is, how did you get into science engagement? I'm an engineer and a nanotechnologist, and I just want to show you this. This is a flea. And this is my world. So as a nanotechnologist, I live in the world of electron microscopes where light is too big to see things, and I use electrons to see things. And I don't know if you know, but fleas have ear hair. See? Things you learn. And what I realize is that I live in this amazing, fascinating world that looks like an alien landscape, and I wanted to be able to share that with people. I feel really privileged to have a lab that has high-powered microscopes and to see the world in a way that many people don't get to see. And so I really wanted to communicate this side of the world that is invisible to our eyes using the visible spectrum, but actually I think is incredibly beautiful. And so the next time you pull a flea off your cat, you'll be like, I got ear hair. And so that's sort of how I got into it. And I think it's a beautiful, beautiful space. I think it's really important. So my parents don't have any education. They got wasted in a bar when they were 17, and here I am. And so there's a lot of assumptions that to be an academic and to be a researcher and to be scientific, you must have had that from your childhood, and I didn't. I grew up with parents who were not academic and have no qualifications. I feel really privileged to now be in a space where I have access to microscopes and research. And I want to see kids like me, kids who didn't have that stuff, kids who just took boxes and imagined things that they didn't have the money for, to still realize that there's a pathway for them. I teach at the University of Auckland. I teach in engineering, and my grades are not good enough now to get into the course that I teach. And I think that's really worrying, because if I was in this generation, I wouldn't be where I am. I wouldn't have this pathway. So I want to make sure that there are pathways open for all of our kids, for all of the future generation to get in, even if they're not necessarily as academic as they'd like to be, or they don't have as many opportunities as some other children. So I'd like to make sure that all of our children have access to science and technology and to different pathways. That was me. All I had was a red tablecloth, and I imagined flying, and so that's pretty much what it was. What do I love about it? Okay, so as an engineer, I'm a builder of things, I'm a fixer of things, and now with engagement, I get to use my engineering skills to do, well, this. Yes, that is a supermarket trolley and 2 fire extinguishers and the power of thrust. And so I get to be creative and share science in a way that I can't do in my lab. They would never let me put that thing down in my nanotech lab. And I think that's really important. How do you teach scientific principles in a way that everybody understands and is engaging and is fun? And right now I'm on a 6-week tour around New Zealand. So I'm here in Dunedin because we're at the Regent Theatre tomorrow with our big Nanogirl live explosive science show. And I get to use my skills in a way that hopefully engages other people who might not think science is for them to see and to learn about concepts. We teach about, Newton's first law, and we teach about all sorts of principles, but in a way that is fun and engaging and loud and obnoxious and silly and funny, and we call it edutainment. We want to engage people who may think science isn't for them. And I think that's really important to make sure everybody's coming along with science engagement, not just those who are already into science. What works well in New Zealand? Oh, so many things. There are so many things, and I'm really privileged to travel the country and see pockets of awesomeness everywhere. Victoria also asked us what doesn't work well, and I think we're really good at tiny projects that are localized, and what I'd love to see is more momentum around connecting that through, and rather than everybody trying to do their little project, which is their little baby and is amazing, that we all say, how can we connect all of these so actually we have this movement that is moving together and that is talking to each other? Because I think if you look at how many little projects there are doing little bits of science engagement, we could do it together, and I think it would actually be much more impactful. And measuring impact, I think, is really important too. We survey every child that goes through our program, and it's really interesting to see the same children as they develop through their childhood. My 5 minutes are up. So, what was that question? How can we better engage young women in science? I don't know, but I'm going to try a whole bunch of stuff. Number 1, having positive female role models, I think, is really important. Number 2, I teach coding around the country a lot, and I still have a lot of, and this is a little girl, I want to use an example. In Wellington, I was at the Motor Trade Association teaching coding, and a little girl came up and she said, held her mum's hand, she said, "Mum, what are they doing?" And her mum said, "Oh, I don't know, but that's for boys. It's too hard for girls." And this is 3 months ago. And I still hear that. I still hear, usually mums tell their daughters, that coding stuff, that robotics stuff is not for you. I would love to stop those doors being closed. How are you going to do it? I have no idea. But next week, you're going to see my Kickstarter launch. This is my new book that's coming out. It's a kitchen science cookbook. We are fundraising to get this thing printed. 50 recipes. Every recipe is edible and a science experiment that you can eat, only using stuff from your pantry. And we've had 2,000 testers from around the world tell us if their stuff is in the pantry or not. So I don't know how to fix this. What I know is that if we all throw great ideas in and we all try and figure out what our problem is to solve, we can try some fun stuff. So there you go. Keep an eye on that. Thank you so much.
It's a great start from Michelle. Thank you. And now we're going to move on to Dr. Ian Griffin, who many of you will know as Director of Otago Museum, but of course he is a fabulous science communicator as well in his own right, and has also won, like Michelle has, the Prime Minister's Science Communication Prize. Thank you, Ian.
Kia ora tātou. Ina iwi au te motu, nā marae maha, tātou te hanga ora. Tēnei te mihi ko atu kia koutou me tēnei kaupapa whakahirahira. Nō reira, tēnā koutou, tēnā koutou, tēnā koutou katoa. It's an honour to be on this stage amongst so much science engagement talent. I feel the stage might actually explode. Actually, that's a scary thing to say with Nanogirl around. I thought, what the hell can I say about science engagement that these amazing practitioners may not say? So in putting together this short presentation, I've captured a few lessons from my own career trying to engage people with science. Firstly, in New Zealand, we've got to remember that we're bicultural. And it's really important that even as scientists, we remember that in everything that we do. And here at our museum, we're on a journey to learn how to do this better. And when we do open Tahura, the Otago Community Trust Science Centre, in about 4 weeks, it's going to be the first fully bicultural science gallery we've ever had here. And I'd love to hear what people think of it. As scientists, we should use best practice. And there's a hell of a lot of really good, outstanding research into the way that we should engage the public with science. And I think too often, as scientists, we forget that that stuff's out there. And there are some amazing people in New Zealand, like Nancy Longnecker at the University of Otago, and Rhiannon Salmon in Wellington, who are doing extraordinary work that we should learn from and use in our practice. Absolutely, science engagement is about inspiring the next generation, but it's not just about the children. We've got problems facing our society now that we can't wait for the next generation to solve. We need to persuade the present generation to start changing their behaviors. So absolutely, it's critical to engage with young people, but we must also engage with everybody in society to help them understand the issues that we have and how science can help us hopefully solve some of those issues and those challenges. And that's why museums are important, because they can change lives. That's my mum and dad. I'm very proud of my mum and dad. Like Michelle, I came from a relatively humble background. Both my parents left school at 14, and dad was a bus driver, mum worked in a supermarket. I turned up in 1966. 1970, a program called Star Trek came on TV. And my parents, who both left school at 14, didn't know what to do with a 5-year-old kid who was suddenly bonkers about space. So they did what any working-class parents in London would do at the time. Sunday afternoons, parking was free in London, and they took me to this amazing institution, which is the Science Museum. And that visit changed my life. And that's why I work in museums, because actually museums aren't just about understanding our culture. They can inspire people to take an interest, and that interest can spark careers. And that's not just me talking. There's evidence to back up that statement. Some of the research by Nancy Longnecker and others really points out the value of museums. This paper by John Falk, I think, is seminal, because he makes the point that in your entire life, only 5% of your learning is done in school. So 95% of your learning is away from school. So yes, we should have the best schools, and we should have the best teachers. But if we're going to engage with society, we've got to do it somewhere else as well. And that's where museums come to the party. I went to see Anthony Tonnon, who's a fantastic musician in Dunedin. He played a gig last week, and he said something that resonated with me. I'm trying to talk to my audience without hashtags. And he's gone back to basics. He's really trying to engage with people one at a time around the country with his music. And I'm not saying social media is unimportant, but it only reaches a certain fraction of society. We've got to work to engage with people, whether it's people in retiree groups, whether it's kindergarten groups. We should be able to engage with all of those people. And it's important to realize, as scientists, we always think it's about us telling you what you don't know. The deficit model has gone, it's dead. And we need to understand that in our practice. We also need to collaborate, and coordinate. I think Michelle's point is very well made. We've got loads of national science challenges, loads of cores, and they've all got their public engagement teams. Are they talking to each other? Are they coordinated? Are they strategic? Because we have got a small amount of money in this country, and it's really important that we use it wisely. So collaboration and coordination is critical to the future. And certainly I would agree with Michelle there that we need to do that better. But we can't do things on our own. This museum couldn't do what it does without a huge range of partners, many of whom are listed in this slide. And it's important that we listen to our communities. There is now a scale model solar system on the Central Otago Rail Trail, not because I'm an astronomer and I wanted to do it. The community came to us and said, hey, we've got this idea for a solar system. Can you as a museum work with us? That was driven by the community that we serve. And that to me is an example of good practice. It's not just about me telling you what I think you should know. It's helping you do things that use science to engage. Just briefly, I feel very strongly about this. Science engagement is a profession, not a hobby. Too many people use it as a hobby, as a part-time thing. And I was very privileged to work on this program for a while, the Hubble Space Telescope project. And we now have recognized Hubble as doing an amazing job. It sends back some of the most epochal images that have ever been taken of our universe. But actually, it didn't start that way. When Hubble was first launched, it was launched with a mirror that was the wrong shape. And the American taxpayers were pretty damn furious that billions of dollars had been spent putting this piece of junk into space. What changed? Well, science and engineering changed things. But also, NASA took public engagement seriously. When I worked at Hubble, we had a budget that was about 2% of the mission budget. I had a staff of 40 people focused on communicating science from Hubble to the public. NASA took it seriously. And if you're going to do science engagement seriously, you need to fund it seriously. You can't do it on half a penny. So that's that. You don't have to be a scientist to be good at science engagement. I'll pass on that slide because it's a bit pointless. These are my, you've heard of the laws of robotics. These are Griffin's laws of science engagement. It's a key part of our biculture. A science-literate, science-engaged society is essential if we're to address the challenges that face our planet. Scientists have a duty to communicate their work. World-class science demands world-class public engagement. We need to fund it and coordinate it nationally. I'd suggest from Dunedin, but I'm biased. And centres of informal learning have enormous potential to inspire the next generation of creative citizens, so fund them. And as a final point, it's not really about the money, it's about the people. And good science engagement, as you'll hear this evening from my colleagues, is all about the people. So it's hei tangata, hei tangata, hei tangata. Thank you.
Some provocative thoughts to kick things off from Ian Griffin. And now we're going to move across to the far side there, to Professor Hamish Spencer, who's familiar probably to many of you because he is from the University of Otago here in Dunedin, but he has a split personality or perhaps a dual role, and that he is also one of the two science advisors for the Ministry for Business, Innovation and Employment. I'll let Hamish introduce himself.
Thank you very much. I'm delighted to be here this evening and to talk to you about some of the science engagement work that I have done, but I want to make it clear that I have done what I've done as part of a much larger team. I have to say I'm astounded that both Michelle and Ian have stolen all my best lines already. I was going to point out to you that all the slides that are behind me tonight are slides of people. And really, that's the crucial thing. This is all about engaging with people. So I want to talk to you about some work that I led, but was really a team member that was done by the Ellen Wilson Centre. How many people here remember the public talks that the Ellen Wilson Centre organised that were in the St David's Lecture Theatre, and we got all these eminent international scientists to come and give really quite amazing lectures? Well, one of the things that you might not know is that the Ellen Wilson Centre did a completely different kind of science engagement as well, and that's what I want to talk to you about tonight. So we started out on a project engaging with the community up at Tolaga Bay on the coast just north of Gisborne. That's the little community that's around the Uawa River. And you can see in some of the photos here, you would have seen the one of Sir Peter Gluckman earlier on. It grew out of an opportunity that we had to go up and meet the community there. And the critical thing that the Wilson Centre did in engaging with that community was to form a relationship. And in fact, we became friends. And I was up there just 2 weeks ago talking to the people at the school. And the first thing that happened was that I got big hugs from everybody on the staff there that I met because they were delighted to see me again. Now that's very nice because it shows that you have a good relationship. And how do you get that good relationship? You get it by having a conversation with the community that you're trying to engage with. So we went and talked to the people at Tolaga Bay, and we had a real conversation in which their project developed. So they were talking to us as biologists about some replanting they wanted to do just outside the school on the riverbank. And we talked to them about that, and we said, is that really what you want to do? And they said, well, actually, no, we'd like to do a bit more than that. And so what we did, essentially, was help them articulate their vision. We never told them what they should do. We asked them what they wanted to do, and we suggested, well, you could go about it doing these things or doing those things. And we asked them questions. So one of the things they said they wanted to do was some restoration. And we asked them the question, do you want to restore to the time when you first arrived in Aotearoa? Or do you want to restore to the time when Captain Cook arrived? Or do you want to restore to the time 100 years ago? And that question had never occurred to them, but it has all sorts of practical implications. We were also able to provide great introductions to other parts of the science community. We weren't, in fact, in the Wilson Centre quite the right kind of scientists. I mean, as far as they were concerned, we were biologists in the Wilson Centre, and, you know, a biologist's a biologist, but we were evolutionary geneticists, or sometimes biomathematicians, and we're not ecological restorers. But we knew some ecological restorers, and so we could put the people of Otago Bay in contact with some people who really knew what they were doing. You realise as scientists you have links to all sorts of people. You might not be the right scientist. When you get asked a question by somebody, you don't actually always know the answer. You know, it's quite all right to say you don't know, but you can almost always find out because you have links to other scientists. So we engage with the community, help them articulate their vision, and now if you go up to Otago Bay, they have a project which they call Uawa Nui, which means big Uawa, right? So they have a catchment-wide community health project that grew out of what they thought was just planting a few trees in commemoration of the transit of Venus. So there's a number of things about the slides that have been rotating behind me that I really want to point out to you, and they answer some of the questions that we got asked before. And so what, you know, one of the questions is that we got asked was, what makes your heart sing when you do science engagement? Well, a number of the things behind me there make my heart sing. First of all, one is that you saw a slide of a whole lot of people laughing, right? When you're giving a talk to a bunch of people about science and the audience laughs, it means they've understood, right? That's that aha moment, right? Everyone who's been a teacher lives for that aha moment in their students, right? You know, you're explaining something to somebody and suddenly the light bulb goes on, and that's just the best feeling, right? But you can get that in a group. When they laugh at some joke you've made, you know that they've understood the point behind it, and that's something that really makes my heart sing. There's also other things that are sort of much more poignant. There's a picture of me up there releasing a duck. It's actually a brown teal. It's part of a restoration project, actually with another iwi up on the east coast. And they gave me that duck to release into the wild as a measure of the honour in which they held the work that the Wilson Centre had done with that group of people. So it was a measure of the relationship that we had built with that community. And it means, once you have that relationship, you can really go fast forward, right? You have that relationship with the community, they trust you. When we first went up there, they were a little suspicious, right? Why were these group of scientists coming up there to talk to them? What was in it for us? They'd asked us for some help, but how come we kept coming back and asking questions and doing all these other things? We built a relationship over time. You can't do it in 5 minutes. You can't do it for 50 cents, right? It takes money, it takes time, it takes commitment, and it takes honesty in your relationship. But once you've done that, it's just fantastic. One of the things, could we connect the dots better? Where's the coherence? One of the things that I find rather sad about the New Zealand science engagement system is we're really good at starting up new things that work well. So this was great. What the Wilson Centre was great. We knew that the funding would come to an end at some point, and what's happening at Uawa Nui is now self-sustaining, which is really important, right? We tried to set it up so that once the Wilson Centre wasn't there, that would keep going. But you look around at the lab in the box things, right? Lab in a box has to go around looking for money all the time. We're very good at coming up with things like lab in a box or Uawa Nui or many of the other things. And then we look around for funding and the funding isn't there. So one of the things that I would like to see change is to have some longer term funding for things that have been proven to be successful. I'm probably at my 5 minutes by now. Thanks.
Thank you very much, Hamish. Again, some very thought-provoking comments here to kick things off. And now I'd like to introduce Dr. Barbara Anderson, also from Dunedin and Landcare Research. And Barbara, she'll tell you about it, I'm sure, but she's done some absolutely extraordinary things in the science engagement space over the last 3 years, particularly to do with te reo and interactions with Māori. And she has run the highly, highly successful exemplar Ahi Pepe MothNet.
Tēnā koutou, tēnā koutou, tēnā koutou, tēnā koutou katoa. I te taha o tōku mātua, he uri o no te iwi o ka Shetland Islands. Ko Ronas te, I should stand here, Moka, ko Brewick, ko Moana. This is my ancestral home in the Shetland Islands, and my little short, round mountain, Ronas. Ko Anderson toku hapu, ko Avansgarth toku marae. This is the remaining of where my great-great-great-great-grandfather left to come to New Zealand. Ko Gideon Anderson toku tipuna, ko Swallow toku waka. I tai mai a Gideon ki ka drona Aotearoa no reira. Ko Te Titea toku marae moka, ko Mata Ao te awa, ko Branch Creek toku marae. This is my mountain, Mount Cadrona, and it's also my field site, so it's very special to me. Ko Barbara toku Ikwa, ko Ralph toku Hoatane, ko Akimai taku Kori, tēnā koutou, tēnā koutou, tēnā koutou katoa. And this is my husband helping on the top of the mountain set up the weather station, myself and my dog in the corner, all on the same mountain. And one of the questions was, how did I get into science engagement? And I, like Nanogirl and Ian, come from a very non-science, very non-academic background. I'm in fact the first person from my family to have finished high school. And I feel that I've been communicating science my whole life since I was at high school. And I went to the UK as a postdoc, and I worked a lot with the data that citizen science give to me. So all these yellow marks are all the citizen science recording from the UK. And the maps in the corner are what I did with that data and some of the papers that we made from that. And this is really how I started with science engagement. I started from the other end. I started as the scientist using the data that the public had very kindly gone out and collected for me, and that NGOs had curated for me and put into nice files. And from that, we made amazing papers, I think, that some even made some difference to the way that conservation was done in the UK. So I started from the other end, and then I came back to New Zealand, and I wanted to do the same thing. I was all like hyper excited about being back in New Zealand and doing conservation and science that really works based on evidence-based science. And I realised that there wasn't that data source here because we didn't have that history of collecting. And I was talking to my cousin in the corner with the red circle around it, who is in fact the best teacher in the world, from a tiny little school in Clydeville. And I was talking on Facebook. So how it all began is actually through Facebook. And I said, we need to do this, and we need to get more data, and how can we do that? We need people to go out and collect it, and so they need to know about the moths, and we need to get, and where can we get people? And she said, well, I've got lots of kids. They run around, they do science things. We could do a little project. And so we made up the Unlocking Curious Minds project through Facebook. And we applied for it, and we got the funding, and we were only going to do a class, her class. And she said, oh, actually, I talked to the other teachers, and the whole school wants to do it. Everyone wants to do it, and they want to make it into a whole term project, not just a 2-day project. And that's why I had my favourite whakatoki in the corner, because I'm a big fan of whakatoki. Kawae mate wheke, mate ururoa. So don't die like the octopus, die like the hammerhead shark. And I feel like that really is something. Take the challenge and run with it. So that's what we've done. And it is all about whānau and friends. It's all about all the connections and the people that keep you going. And these are just pictures of the kids and the amazing smiles on their faces. This is where Vic said we should put pictures of things that make us sing. Why do we do it? And I think it's because when you see someone smile like that, because they've managed to pin a moth that looks amazing, and they're proud of it. So next question, how do we join the dots? Better money, so we don't have to spend all our time fundraising, although it is a good lesson, like it's quite good for the kids, right? They like the whole counting money, they like to see it coming in, it's all great, they're very intent on it, they like selling stuff, and they're fantastic at it. Listen, I think listening to the other people, not just ourselves, but standing and sitting and however you do the listening best, I think it's good to listen to the other people. And walking together. So we need to do all the stages all together. So not just take the first bits and then move on when we've got what we've got, but make sure that we're really not us leading or them leading, but everyone walking together in the path all the way. So what is working well in New Zealand? I think in New Zealand what is working well is that we have started to embrace our biculturalism, and we have a fantastic structure in places. So we have the whānau who are dedicated to doing things, and if we can get them as excited about science and science workshops and science weekends away as they are about rugby and hockey and netball practice, we're on a winner. It's got nowhere to go. We know that parents are dedicated. They do that. They come out on the weekends. They can do it for moths. And these kids here, they got up at 4 o'clock to get on a plane from Dunedin to get to Wellington to present their moth project to a science conference. And I think if you can get 10, 11-year-old kids to get up at 4 o'clock to go to a science meeting and still be awake at 3 o'clock when they give the talk, I think that's fantastic. So this is just them to say, well done. This is some more of our cool, exciting trips and pictures. The other stuff, all the learning that goes along with it. It's not the things that you teach, it's the journey that you go on and all the other bits and making everyone excited and self-confidence and everything. Where do we need to grow? We need to grow the te reo Māori resources. People, we need to get on board with this. We can't just have science resources in English, and we can't just have te reo resources that are translated from English into Māori. It's not good enough. We actually have to go and engage with our Te Kura Kaupapa Māori, with our immersion te reo schools, with our whānau. We have to engage with them, and we have to make the connections, and we have to make the resources that connect to these people. They are part of our people, and te reo Māori is an official language of New Zealand. We have schools we have 72 Te Kura Kaupapa Māori schools in New Zealand, and I never realised this until I engaged with the local Te Kura Kaupapa Māori o Otupoti. I never realised that, but that's 5,000 students who have very, very few resources in Māori. Sorry, end of rant. What can we learn from other countries? We can learn that we need to have long-term national recording schemes. And we don't need to reinvent the wheel. We can just go and take theirs and just use it here and make it better. But we don't need to start from scratch. People know how to do this stuff. We just need to do it and fund it. And then I just put pictures of me actually singing, because Vic said, what makes you sing? This made me sing in the airport. I was really overtired. And this is our conference trip to Toronto, which we want to thank everyone, and I see some friendly faces in the audience who helped us get there, and of course the Otago Museum, who held our Aihuka art auction, which was our huge funder, and big props to the Otago Museum for that. Otago Museum rocks. I would vote for them being the centre of recording and moths to finish. And I think at the end, I have one picture of all of the team from the Ahi Pepe MothNet team. So we're a whole heap of people all together, working together, and I talk the most, so sometimes I get to be up here. Thank you. Tēnā koutou, tēnā koutou.
Thank you so much, Barbara, and I think a strong theme coming through is everyone's passion up on stage for this space, and it's great to hear that passion coming through. Last in terms of our 5 panellists, but by no means least, is Professor Peter Dearden, again familiar to many of you in the audience because he is another University of Otago staff member here, and he's also the creator of the very, very successful Unlocking Curious Minds funded project, Lab in a Box, which many of you have probably stepped inside. Over to you, Peter.
Hello. Normally, I'm looking at the camera here. Hi, television people, because apparently we're being live streamed. I don't think I've ever been live streamed before. It's quite painful. Also, I'd get that cameraman there. He hates me because normally he does my first year lectures, and I wander around the room. So, just wondering whether I can get away with taking. No. Okay. Hi, my name's Peter. I am the person who had the idea of Lab in a Box and you see lots of Lab in a Box photos around the wall, and I want you to just look at them occasionally because actually Lab in a Box is cool and I really like it. But the people who really run Lab in a Box are the fantastic engagement team here at the museum. Some of them are sitting there. You should take a bow. Stand up and take a bow. Yeah, there we go. And Craig in the corner. And one of the great things about Lab in a Box is it's a collaboration. It's a fantastic project. You should all take people to go and see Lab in a Box. Currently it's in the North Island, so you're out of luck. And because it's so good and so cool, I don't want to talk about it at all. I do want to say one thing about Lab in a Box. Lab in a Box is about engaging people with science communication outside where they might expect. So not just in schools, but sometimes in shopping centres and sometimes in farmers markets. One of my dreams, something that really, I dream constantly, is that I want Hamish Spencer standing on a barrel in Dunedin Farmers Market talking about evolution, right? I mean, I think that's where we need to engage people about science. And I think, and I'd like to thank you for the questions and acknowledge those questions and now not answer them, because I wanted to talk about some other things. I wanted to talk about the one thing that I feel is being lost from science communication, because we talk about science communication, science engagement, we talk about all this stuff, and we forget that actually at the core of getting science across to people, all the way from just introducing them to a concept to indicating where science is important in their lives, we forget the key concept, and that concept is wonder. Right? Behind me is, I hope, there's a picture of a tree. Right? And people go, wow, that's a pretty cool tree. It's a nice tree. I like the tree. I stole it off the internet. I don't know where the tree is. But that tree is remarkable, as is every tree on Earth, because it's built from the air. Right? You know that you go to school and you get taught about photosynthesis, and there's this thing where carbon dioxide goes into a tree and oxygen comes out, and we thank trees for their oxygen. We should thank them for the fact that they're taking that carbon. What are they doing with that carbon? They're making trees with it. Trees are made from air. That is such a remarkable and simple fact, right? It's also a way of talking about what we do to our environment. When we cut down a tree, we take that carbon which has come out of the air and we put it in a lump on the ground. When we burn it, we put that carbon back in the air. When we take vast areas of the Amazon and burn it, we're putting all of that carbon extracted from the air back in again. Can you imagine, every time you walk down a street and there are trees, they're made from air. It's amazing. I want to show you something else. This is an out of focus, hopefully, this is an out of focus picture of my wedding ring, right? So I want to ask you in the audience, how many of you remember where you were on the 19th of August at 1:48 a.m.? Any of you remember? So you should remember, because at that point, a series of gravity waves, a newly discovered idea, well, not an old idea, but newly discovered phenomenon, hit planet Earth. Those gravity waves stretched Earth in such a way that you probably wouldn't have noticed, but actually you got, depending on which way you were lying, you either got shorter or wider by a very small extent. Those gravity waves came from two neutron stars colliding 163 million light years away. That waves took all that time to hit Earth, and physicists, there's one sitting in the audience here, say, well, that was a really loud event. What happened? These gravity waves. So neutron stars, let's talk about neutron stars. These are things which are like 80 times the weight of our sun, compressed into something which is about a sphere about 10 kilometers across. And two of these things, 163 million years ago, crashed into each other. And the waves from that collision hit planet Earth on the 19th of August at 1:48 in the morning. Why is this important? Why does it relate to my wedding ring? My wedding ring is made up mainly, mostly, of gold. And we discovered in that collision and through the signature of those waves that gold, the element gold, is made through the collision of neutron stars. Isn't that outstanding? Now, neutron stars don't crash together every day, and they don't happen very much in our neighborhood, or we'd be toast. But all the gold on Earth seems to have come from the collision of neutron stars. And you think about some of the heavier elements on Earth that are used in your iPhones, that are used in this clicker thing. They all come from the collision of these very rare events, these neutron stars way out in space that have been accreted onto Earth during its development. And then you think about the sort of people who put little gold leaf on desserts and make you eat them. And you think, what a bloody waste. Right? I hate those. We're going to a restaurant, they do that. Oh, fucking hell. It's vitally, no, this is about our resources. Resources on this planet are limited. We have only this planet, and its resources are made from the collision of neutron stars. I want to show you something else, and this is a picture that I took myself, right? This is a picture that I think is the most important picture in biology that I've ever taken, right? This is actually a bit of an embryo of a fly. You'll notice there's these sort of blue things. Those are chromosomes. Those are basically cells dividing. This is a fly that's just started to develop. It's just been born, it's been laid by its mother fly, and it's just starting to make its cells. But there are some cells here that are different. Those 3 cells there have got that red stuff around them. So those cells are now different from these cells. And that is the moment where this cell, this embryo, connects itself with its past and its future. These cells are going to make a fly. Those cells are going to make germ cells, the cells that make the next generation of fly. And this happens so early in the development of a fly. The first thing a fly does is it decides, that's going to make my next generation. So at this moment, this photograph captures the moment when this fly has an evolutionary future. It doesn't, because I fixed it and fried it and stuck it on a slide. However, that's what it's doing. It's ensuring its future. It's linking itself into those great chains of life, all the way forward into evolution and all the way back to the first organism on Earth. Right? Isn't that a remarkable thing? And it's those remarkable things, that tree built from air, that my ring built from the collapse of neutron stars, and the moment where this organism plugs itself into the network of life, those are the things that we need to communicate to people. Because in those things, we can talk about resource management, we can talk about global warming, we can talk about evolution, we can talk about extinction. Isn't it important when we sit there and think about the extinction of a species? This moment for that species never happens again, right? I think through wonder, through capturing people with ideas like that, even in any situation, at a coffee break, on a barrel in the farmer's market, anywhere, in a pub on the West Coast, that's how we capture people into science. Because everyone is interested in those things that really make them think. Oh my God, I've gone way off my notes now. I didn't write the next bit of the speech. Thank you for listening. I hope that actually when you go home, you remember these fantastic people talking about science communication and talking about the way that it's so important for us to go out there and communicate what we do in science. But I also hope you remember that actually science isn't something that is done by Hamish in his laboratory. Actually, he doesn't have one. In my laboratory. Science is something that everyone does every day. The science cookbook is an example of that. All right? Everyone does science every day. And I think we lose something when we talk about science communication. This is about communication. All right? Science is part of the way that we communicate. And by communicating ideas, which could be about science, or they could be about art, or they could be about history, the communication of those ideas is important. So I would say to you, go away and talk to people and find that moment of wonder that makes them think, this is really cool. Thank you so much for listening.
Wow. We've got some more thought-provoking comments here. Thank you so much, Peter, and I'm sure you're getting your question juices flowing. So because I want to make sure we leave heaps of time for questioning, I'm going to keep this pretty brief. So my mother tells a lot of people that I was born to be a scientist, and she loves saying that story. She may well be right. From a very early age, I was extremely curious, asked a lot of questions, and had that awe and wonder just oozing out of me about the world around me. But I would also say that, in contrast to a couple of the other stories here, that I was very privileged in my childhood, and the opportunities that both of my parents provided me to get out there and really explore the world around me. So we spent a lot of our childhood as a family, as kids in the great outdoors, whether it was up trees, writing poetry often, or climbing mountains, walking through the bush, or by the seashore. And so that's where I got to explore and really experiment. And first become a scientist. So I feel very blessed that I was given those opportunities. And also from a very, very early age as well, I had a great love of animals, which has carried on right through my life. And in particular, I loved exploring the edges of the seashore, what was in rock pools and what was in the oceans. And that's part of what led me to indirectly becoming a marine biologist after studying biochemistry and genetics first. And it was on that journey that I then discovered Antarctica during my PhD, and went on a research journey that involved a lot of trips to the ice and Antarctica. And during all of that time, my background in speech and drama and a love of English, paralleled with this love of the sciences, really started that science communication and engagement process for me. So I got lots of opportunities to give public talks, and it was, you know, an opportunity for me too to explore my passion and creativity about science in a different space. So I think for many of the people here today, it became as a rather natural journey into science communication and science engagement, and it was an awful lot of fun. But actually, nearly 3 years ago now, I embarked on a very different role that took me away from that main job as a scientist and as a lecturer in a university space to a job where I have the scariest sounding job title. It says National Coordinator of the Participatory Science Platform in the Office of the Prime Minister's Chief Science Advisor. But actually, I think I'm lucky enough to have one of the best jobs in New Zealand, because this role sees me work under this government initiative called Curious Minds, which is all about getting people enthused and in contact with science and technology, irrespective of their age and irrespective of their location around New Zealand. And I run something called the Participatory Science Platform, which is again quite a mouthful, so we call it PSP for short. But this is a really wonderful platform because we provide funding and mentoring support for communities to work on science that means something to them, science and technology that means something to them. So they're actually doing scientific research in conjunction with scientists and technologists, and they're making a difference in their communities whilst also democratising the science process, which I think is fundamentally important. It's something the others have touched upon, getting away from that idea that only scientists do science and into that space of everyone is doing science all the time and everyone can be involved in scientific research. And so in my role, I get to do the craziest things because I get to go around the country and visit all the projects that we've funded and be a part of them while they're doing some of their activities. So I can sort of see how they're working and what learnings we can take away, and I can report back to various ministries and my office. And so, you know, for example, last week I was a cheese judge. It's not every day that you get to be a cheese judge in your job, but one of the projects we'd funded was on school children in South Taranaki making their own blue cheese. And I can tell you their cheese was actually pretty good. Or whether it's surveying a reef, a rocky shore reef, as part of a Kaimoana survey. So I'm very blessed in the opportunities I have, and sometimes I get to get really mucky, like the day we had to go out and catch baby flounder for a project where they're trying to rear flounder in captivity for the first time. This is an iwi-led Ngāti Pawa project up in South Auckland. And there was a lot of up to your knees in estuary mud, which is great fun. But what a learning opportunity for the children, the tamariki involved at the same time. Not only were they learning about the science and involved in the catching of the species that they were studying and raising within their school grounds in tanks specifically given to them to do this, but they were getting to explore the environment around them as well. So I feel my heart sing when I go on these trips because I get to see people engaging in the world around them with the same sense of awe and wonder that I had as a child. So I'm providing, or I'm helping facilitate those opportunities for those young people. And here's another example of a project that I visited a couple of weeks ago, where this school, Toko School, tiny little school in Taranaki, very rural, has got a still set up in the school. No, they're not making their own gin, or at least I hope they're not with our funding, and I'm sure they're not. What they're doing is collecting their own plants from their school environments, and they're trying to extract hydrosols and essential oils from the plants to begin making their own products that they can sell to help raise money for the school. And they're starting by producing their own cleaning products, which they're doing in a very scientific process. This is the kind of thing that makes my heart sing. And again, I know you've seen a lot of photos like this of the moment of aha, or the expression of awe and wonder in children's or adults' faces as they engage with the world around them. So this is a Weta project. Oops. And, you know, young people and anyone can go on and do extraordinary things. And so, you know, I'm very blessed to have seen the progression of some of the projects we've funded, such as the wonderful things that Barbara has done with Ahi Pepe MothNet. Like, the full story of what she's achieved in that project over the last 3 years will blow your mind. And I encourage you to ask her more about it, because it is phenomenal. But also this project, again, this is in Taranaki. They've won the Green Ribbon Environment Award for their study of an offshore reef several kilometres offshore that no one would normally be exposed to, but through the actions of an underwater dive club who's brought it into the community, and in particular into the schools, the whole community now knows about the wonderful biodiversity present on that reef. And some of the school children involved in that project were invited to go speak at a select committee hearing in Parliament a few months ago. And they went down and they spoke about this project and what they had found during their studies, including actually going out several k's offshore and fishing and doing fishing surveys on this reef over and above. And they received the first applause that select committee had given in 12 years. And that's, you know, what a life-changing moment for these young people, these rangatahi, to have presented at Parliament. And this is not just about the science, this is about the opportunities, the total breadth of the opportunities that we can provide. And lastly, I'd just like to mention that through my work, I get, you know, opportunities also to speak. And one of the things, like Michelle, I'm very passionate about is doing something good to support women and girls into STEM careers, and specifically to help them stay in STEM careers. So I hope that's something that we touch on this evening as well. So thank you very much. I'm going to sit back down and continue the discussion. So we've had 6 of us speak, and I think a number of clear themes have emerged. Firstly, everything that we do in the science engagement space is about the people, and those conversations, and also I heard a lot of commentary coming through about listening as well as talking, and I believe that's important. Other themes that we heard about were the importance of connectivity and true collaboration. Creativity and passion was a strong theme coming through. That inclusivity of everyone, and particularly noting our bicultural nature in New Zealand. And finally, I did hear quite a few people touching on the concept of sustainability in this space, and this really long-term view of what we do for science and science engagement. So I'd just like to start some questions off by firstly asking about career opportunities. So is it possible in New Zealand, obviously it is because I have a role in that space, but is it truly possible for a number of people, like more than just one, to have a career in science engagement in New Zealand? And if there are doubts over that from our panel members, what can we do to create those opportunities? And it looks like Peter...
Passing the mic
This is going to be interesting, how we negotiate who will speak.
Is it possible? At present, I would say it's possible, but it's very difficult. I think there needs to be more, and it should be possible, and we can move in that direction. I think part of what we need to do in order to get there is we actually need to value it more as a science community and as a community at large. We need to value not just science, but science communication, and we need to support the people who do it and who do it well, and enable them to have that as a valuable opportunity. And I think that's fundamental, particularly from the scientists and the institutions themselves, because there's a lot of negativity that comes from the old guard and from the peers about people who are doing science engagement, that they're no longer really doing proper science. And I think that's wrong. And I think that is changing, but I think it needs to change. And I think it needs to change from the top down, with people who are in charge of our big institutions. And I think it's starting to change as well.
Can I just say a couple of things? I agree with Barbara that I think it's actually very hard for people to have a whole career in science engagement. But to me, that's slightly the wrong question. I would rather see more scientists engaged with science engagement, because I think you notice that a number of the people who spoke are actually active scientists. And I think active scientists can convey something about the excitement of science. Why do we do science, right? We do science largely, you saw a list of things up there that Barbara put up, right? We don't do science to make us rich or to give us prestige or any of those things. We do science because we're passionate about it. And communicating that passion is critical. And I think that's why where practicing scientists can, if they not every scientist will be able to do it, but a large number of scientists could. And again, I agree with Barbara, if that kind of work is valued more by the people who employ scientists, then we'll see a whole lot more science engagement.
I think it's a difficult career, but there are bright spots. I think this museum in particular is a good example of where an environment has been made where science communication can occur and where people can fit into that mold and do the science communication. And I think that's a really amazing thing. I think so many of our museums and our other institutions haven't engaged in that, so I think it's an important thing. But I'm doing too much agreeing. I agree with Hamish. One of the things we need to do. I'd like to say I completely disagree with Hamish on this matter. I think that scientists need to communicate. I think I've for a long time I've been a bit iconoclastic and thought actually there's no need for a group of people called science communicators. Because scientists should do this job, but it's not true. We do need science communicators, and I've had the privilege of working with a lot of really, really great ones who are able to do things that I would never dream of being able to do, so it's fantastic. But I do think scientists need to get out there and do their science communication themselves. You pay us, you probably trained us. It's really, it is our duty to be out there and to talk about what we do and why we do it and why we find it important, in the hope that you might find it important and interesting as well. So I think that's a really, I think universities are changing their science courses to achieve that, but we're not there yet.
Okay, we've got an audience question here. Just there's a mic coming, so yeah.
Thanks very much. Carolyn Burns, University of Otago. It's actually more of a comment, but it sort of inspires me to say it, in that Vicky, you raised, and Hamish raised in their replies, the word passion. To me, the word that I would like to use is enthusiasm, because the definition that I heard many, many years ago about what a good teacher is, and how to be a good teacher, was simply that a good teacher is someone who transmits enthusiasm. from one person to the next, from the person to the student. And I think that characterises all the presentations we've had today. And that is the crucial element of science communication, of any sort of communication. And I think, you know, as long as that's there, whether we've got professional communicators or whether we have got scientists who can transmit that enthusiasm, I'm not sure. Well, to me, it doesn't matter, but it's an essential ingredient of whether you're, you know, a paid science communicator or whether you're a good scientist in terms of communication, communicating with the public and the public communicating with you.
I think that's an excellent comment, and I think Michelle looks like she's keen to respond to that.
So this is a talk about the future of science communication, and I think the challenge with what you've said is that the system isn't set up for it to be equal. So as an academic, we have what's called the PBRF. We are assessed based on our research, not on our communication. Our communication is considered a hobby because it's something we do extra to all the things that we have to do as part of being an academic. And so I think what I'd love to see in the future is the PBRF system also recognising engagement and outreach as part of the system, not as something additional that we have to do, so that we can all actually spend our day jobs sharing our enthusiasm. And I feel there's a comment coming back here. Hold on. It's going to be fun.
Richard Blakey is here and would like to
kia ora. I'm Richard Blakey from University of Otago. Also, when my kids ask me what I do, I was a scientist, but now I do email, university administration. Actually, that's a really good point, Michelle. I think what we are is we're in a dynamic system. This time around, the PBRF has a section around research contributions where you can talk not only about the peer esteem that you have, the contribution to the research environment, but under a broad heading of contributions outside academia. So I think we are going through those transitions, and it's I think there's a recognition that we have to reflect on our future, that what will happen in going forward will be different. And look, I just really think this is a great opportunity about engagement. I just, while I've got the microphone, wanted to make a comment on something Hamish said about engagement. I'm glad this is called engagement and not outreach, because I think what we've seen, a comment that Hamish made that I haven't, I've valued from this, is the in-reach that it can involve. It can also be about engaging within the science community, about us doing our job better if we are active scientists, by going out and talking to communities. It's not just about ticking the box, it's about proper and right engagement. But it can support us to do the research better ourselves and connect internally with other researchers as well, as a comment.
We've got a question up the back.
I'm actually the communications meteorologist there, so this is really interesting, and it's great to see all your enthusiasm and passion there. I do think, I just want to add a comment in there, that as a scientist, I think it is our responsibility to be a communicator. That as a scientist, it's our job to let people know about science, let people know what's happening. And if you write an interesting paper, you make a discovery, it's our responsibility to make sure that gets out there to people as well. And I think we need to take a little bit of put that on board ourselves and try and get that out to people. But other than that, really great talks. Thanks very much.
So hopefully everyone heard that. There's Lisa Murray from Met Service, and talking about the importance of communication as a fundamental part of the science process. And I think all of us would agree with that, I'm sure. So more questions from the audience. We've got one down here.
Thank you very much. I'm Graham Reid, and I was born and spent all my life here in Dunedin. I came to this museum when I was a schoolboy, and I've kept coming since. Now, I don't believe that I would have been here tonight, or on as many visits as I have been in the last few years, admittedly, since I retired, without the excitement, without the change that's taken place. It's all around us, all over the museum. Tonight is just another shining example. Thank you all very much for the opportunity.
Can I bring a downer to proceedings? Because, I mean, it's very easy for us to say that there are some fantastic... I mean, you know, I'm in the presence of greatness on this stage today, so it's humbling to be here. But, you know, we've got real problems still facing our society and real challenges. You know, the climate change, which I think many scientists accept, is something that's happening that we should be concerned about. We don't seem to necessarily be winning that debate in the public forum. There are other issues, again, that my concern is, you know, how do we strategically use the power of science as the best tool we've got to understand the world, to communicate that actually, you know, in some areas this debate isn't really a debate. And to my mind, the space that we have to work in museums in particular, perhaps, because we're slightly, dare I say it, slightly safer spaces than maybe an academic space at a university, for public engagement anyway. How do we go about, you know, utilising the amazing research that's being done and communicating it to our audiences in ways that really do bring them along on this journey? And I sit here and I still see, I look at, you know, you read the papers, you see in the media, we've got a president who doesn't necessarily believe in climate change. And I see that as a problem that we as a community somehow, we haven't yet addressed. And I don't know what the answer is, but certainly while I recognise lots of great work's being done at the local level in particular, strategically something's missing, and how do we address that? That's a question to the audience, really.
So let's see, where do I push it? Hello. Okay, you can tell immediately from my accent that I'm a cultural refugee from probably the place that Ian was referring to. I've been outside of the United States for 22 years, thank God. And I have to say that I was thinking about saying something along your lines, but I didn't really want to bring the proceedings down. So thanks for giving me an opening. I'm a practicing scientist, and I guess for me, there's a little bit, and I know I'm going to step on some toes here, but there's a little bit of cringe when I hear the term scientific communication, especially, and I really apologize, when it's journalists and communicators, because scientists can't communicate. We all know that we've been told years and years we're lab coats, we're geeks, we can't communicate. I think we can communicate just grand. Okay, the other thing is that I do agree completely that we need to be practicing scientists to engage people in science, because science is a method. It's not a series of facts. Somebody said the deficit model doesn't work. That's right. I come from a country where the deficit model was the model for years and years. Make science fun. It's a series of facts. Let kids enjoy it. It's always fun. I don't know about you, but the work of science is hard work. Hard work. It's just like an athlete preparing for the Olympics, or a professional career, or an artist. There's a lot of sacrifice that goes through. It's not always fun. God knows writing grant proposals to fund yourself and getting beat back time and time again is not fun. It takes persistence. Okay, so when we show generations of people that science is fun, and oh, by the way, this was discovered 150 years ago, that's not science. Science is a way, an approach to answer questions. I love these engagements where people are engaging with the community to answer questions that they may have. Sometimes they don't know what the questions are. That's where the communication part of it comes in, to let them know we are here to answer questions. Yes, some of them are curiosity-driven. Others are, what do you know, should we have a marine preserve? What is the effect of effluent on that estuary? We are scientists. In communities, we can address these things. So I apologize for being a downer, okay? But I think that the key thing is we need to address that science is an approach, it's not an endpoint. One of the great quotes, and I'll quit, sorry, I'm going on too long. Claire Patterson, who, I don't know anybody in this room that knows who Claire Patterson was. He was the person that first established the age of meteorites using uranium-lead isotopes, okay, which in turn establishes the age of our solar system and gives us a constraint on the age of the Earth. By the way, it's 4.567 billion years right now, plus or minus 1 in the third decimal place. Anyway, Claire Patterson once said about science, as distinguishing it from art, art lives forever. Science, on the other hand, we do science with the firm knowledge that the future generation, if science works, is going to work its ass off to make us wrong, to improve knowledge. What we find will be overturned. We do it anyway, because it's the best way of figuring out how to go forward.
Can I?
That comment, I'll let Peter respond.
Can I? So I want to answer this. There wasn't actually a question, was there? I want to respond to those comments in two ways. Firstly, as a scientist, I feel your pain. I've written a lot of grants that have been turned down. I've written a lot of papers where the third reviewer deserves to die. You know who you are. Yet, when I get in my lab with the great group of people who I work with, I am having the most fun that I could possibly have, right? There's just the things that I do are, the freedom to do the things that I want to do is a fantastic thing in any job. And I think it's important to emphasize that there is an upside. That's not all grant writing. Sometimes it's looking down the microscope and seeing something astounding. And I have been known to run up and down the lab screaming, yeah, throwing my clothes off. Now, but the other thing I think is is about the nature of science and how we communicate that. And I agree with you that too much emphasis is placed on chunks of knowledge and not enough on process. And I would love to find a way to engage society in doing science in a way to understand I mean, so much we get to this point where people say, oh, well, there's a published paper saying X, therefore X must be true, which as a scientist I sit there, oh, there's a published paper saying X, that's bullshit, it must be wrong. And that science is an iterative process and we spend all our time being skeptical. In my field, there is a famous paper which I know is wrong. Haven't proved it yet, but I'm damn sure it is. And that's part of science, and that's where I want to know. So I think in the 19th century, learned societies like the Royal Society and the Linnaean Society did a much better job in engaging in that case, the rich general public in the process of science, in the discussion of science, in the turning over of ideas. And I think we've got to this point where science is published in scientific journals and they're seen as there's something else. They're separate from society. That's where I think we can make the most gains, because then people can think about climate change not in terms of this paper says this, but in terms of this paper says this and I disagree with it, I think it's wrong, and this paper says something else. The conversation that science actually is. And that's what I think you're probably right. We're not communicating well. Maybe you are.
I was just going to say that I think when we're talking about just communicating, when we're communicating our science to another public, I think that's why that's falling short, right? Because that's us telling people stuff and talking at them all the time. And to be fair, when I first started the Ahi Pepe MothNet project, that was my response. Like, I made this amazing guide, and on the back of it, it had all of the process of how to do science and what a scientific experiment is and how it works and the light spectrum and masses of facts. But the whole it had panels and panels of the, 5 panels of the process. And it was terrible because the kids just didn't look at it, to the point where I had to rip them up. And what I learned from that was when I went to the Te Kura and we had to engage with it. Right, and the kids had like a little democratic at the end of the first day discussion around what they'd learned and how it was going, and we set up our experiment and we set the moth traps all up, and then we came back in and we explained that in the morning we were going to come and look at the moths, and then we were going to kill the moths, and then we were going to work out how many there were in each place and how the treatment was different from the control, and we were going to talk about all of that. And then we had a discussion, and Whaia Te Ahuia, the principal there, asked all the children of the school to vote on whether they thought this was a good idea or not. And they didn't think it was a good idea. They thought it was a terrible idea. And I didn't understand any of that because I was sitting there in an immersion te reo Māori school, not understanding a lot of the conversation that was going on. And then afterwards, I had the discussion with Tia Huia, and she said, well, they didn't think it was a good idea, but we should do it anyway. And I was like, oh, no, we shouldn't do it anyway. They'll just think we're terrible scientists. We've come in here and killed all the moths, so we've convinced them are wonderful things. That's a bad idea. And she agreed it was a bad idea. And then we took that as our challenge. If you can't convince 5-year-olds that the reason you're doing the science is a good reason, then you shouldn't be doing it, or you should stay in your lab. But I think that's what I've learned, and that's how we've progressed it, and we have to go through the process. But I'm not sure that we should constantly think of what we're teaching the public, because I know that from the Ahi Pepe MothNet project, the person who has learnt the most is by far me. And my resounding takeaway is Te Apanui, who had the courage to say no as a 5-year-old on his second week of school. And I think we can learn from that. Anyway, sorry, I'm not sure where that was going.
Can I just respond to one of the things that you said, which is, we as scientists, the public should come to us as scientists and ask us the questions. I think that's a really privileged position. I really do. I think I meet many people, and I go all around New Zealand and around the world, and it's the first time they've ever met a scientist. And they can't believe that they're talking to a scientist. And although I think I'm a normal person, I realize that to some, I live in an ivory tower in a university even that is an intimidating place, and not everybody's been to a university. And so we have to remember that as an academic and as a scientist, we can still sometimes hold a power dynamic that we don't realize we have. And we assume people are okay with coming to us, but that's not the truth. And we have to make sure that we break down these doors and we don't fill our conversations with jargon. And actually we're accessible and open, and that people can come to us. And I don't think that that is necessarily what is true right now.
My name's Jeremy Anderson. I just have a quick couple of things. I think that perhaps there's a science thing that when you produce communication and send it out into the world, you stand around and wait for results to come flooding back so you can measure the effectiveness of it. I kind of would like to politely suggest you might be wasting your time. I think you just need to put it out there, and you just don't know what happens to it. I toured a children's show 20 years ago that lost thousands of dollars, but one child set up a recycling scheme at her school, and that was a win. And I think that there's a lot of that needs to go on. And Dr. Griffin, just on the piecemeal approach to the grand strategy, and I'm working on sort of cats and pest control, and I see all these isolated things going on, and people want to fence this peninsula and fix that piece of bush, and all that sort of stuff. And you were talking about strategy, a grander thing, and I think that we live perhaps in a atomised and very postmodern society, and I just don't think that the grand narrative is a workable option anymore. And we're also culturally, we're a bit half-assed about things in this country. I mean, we really are. I mean, the All Blacks couldn't even play 80 minutes worth of football the other night. So I'm just, I think that, I'm in the middle of Gareth Morgan's National Cat Strategy Plan, and I just think we're past that. We just do things individually and in communities and neighbourhoods, and I'm wondering if you had a response to that. Thank you.
Yeah, I think my response is you're probably right, and I think certainly maybe some of the American states' response to the fact that the president has decided he doesn't want to do something, so they're all actually still going to the climate change conference. Maybe that's an example of how that kind of approach works. I do feel, though, that it's quite sad reflection that in a relatively small country, no disrespect meant to New Zealand, of a few million people, with very few population centres, we can't organise things better. And I recognise that that's possibly, an idealistic view, but it's not beyond the wit of man that we can communicate. We've got this thing called the internet, after all. So I guess maybe that's the way we join up the communities, and the communities come together and do it that way. It's so bottom up rather than top down. But all I'm saying is really in terms of the science engagement, I mean, I'd like to live in a world where the value of a scientist, if I go to court and someone's, I'm accused of something, I want a bloody good lawyer beside me. If I'm navigating across an ocean without GPS, I want to make sure that there's someone who understands the stars and can get me, help me and understand that. So I think part of the communication we have to do is the value of science and the value of the scientific method. And that's not to say, Barbara, that you don't put it into a document for kids. But I think there's a bunch of people out there who just don't get the fact that, the reason scientists are worried about climate change is that they can see the numbers and they're going up in the way that we're actually quite scared about. And we haven't conveyed that for whatever reason. So you're right. I think maybe there's no way we'll get a grand strategy. And maybe the other way of doing it is bottom up and connect it via the internet, and that might get the same result. Thank you.
We've got about 3 minutes left, I think. So I'm keen for some very rapid-fire questions and answers.
Okay. I'm Chris Cameron from Victoria University and Boudica Scientific. Just picking up on your point, Ian, I guess in terms of the challenge that we face in climate change and other challenges faced around the world, well, actually what we need to have is revolutionary change rather than evolutionary change, and how do we flip some of these things on our head, given that the status quo is around PBRF, and it's around research, it's around research outputs. Engagement costs money, and these things have been raised by the panellists. So how do we flip these things on their head? I think one of the things that's come clear through this discussion has been about definitions. So talking about communication, and communication is different than engagement, and one-way direction rather than a two-way thing, and empowering people to take the lead and to own it. And on the other side of it, in terms of collaboration, again with PBRF, it's about competition. So we've got things, are completely upside down and compared to where we want them to. So we want to kind of really flip this over. And I know that seems to me the impression, Ian, that you're giving in terms of your challenge that you're seeking to find solutions for. So how do we turn this thing around? Can't say I've got the answers, but I just wonder whether that's the direction that you're thinking and what the other panellists might think.
Well, I don't want to dominate the conversation, but all I will say is I'm a firm believer. One of my roles, I used to work at NASA, and when I was there, we had all these different missions doing outreach. And the best thing I ever did there was actually get everybody talking, and actually all of us across the network saying these are important factors. And I think, around this country, we've got museums every city that are there to be used by scientists or people who want to communicate their venues. It's just about making the networks work better. And to my mind, we've got all these great people, we've got all these great institutions, we've got all this fantastic infrastructure. It's just that we're not necessarily using it as an amplifier rather than a sort of a thing that just stops. So our network isn't really connected. And maybe one of the things I would propose after this is somehow we need, every year there's this National Digital Forum where it brings everybody working in a certain area together and they make amazing results. Maybe we need a national engagement forum once a year where we bring everybody together to try and talk about how we can better connect and communicate. Because to my mind, we've got to do something.
Thanks, Ian. We've got, I think, 1, 2, 3 quick questions here. So we'll quickly, if we can make them really brief, then we can get through them.
So Vic and Michelle, I'm Inga Smith, so I've just started as a senior lecturer in the physics department on the 1st of July. And so you mentioned the issue with women, keeping women in STEM, and also first in family, which I also am, first in family to get a university degree. And I now find myself part of the old guard. I'm telling women, don't do engagement because it'll hurt your career. Do you think that's changing, or does it still... No.
No. No.
I'm Alan Robbins. I'm a student at the university. Thank you all. I'll try to be very quick. But I think there's something that hasn't been mentioned that much because naturally we've been focused on engaging people outside the scientific community. But I think there is an attitude that is weirdly pervasive within scientists and people who work in that area, where they sort of enjoy how esoteric and difficult to understand their work can be. And there's kind of an attitude that they don't really want to help other people understand because they worked really hard to understand this themselves. And I was wondering how we can fight that attitude.
communication, and I had a professor come up to me and say to me, I don't know why you do what you do, but if you wanted to be a high school teacher, you should be one, because what we do is really hard. And so what we don't talk about is the side of science communication within a system that is quite, hierarchical, there's a lot of negativity around what we do. And I think we all have our battles that we will not share openly, but it's actually not as easy a path as I would like it to be because of that. So we're trying to find a system that actually has been grounded for a long time. And yeah, it's a challenge sometimes.
I'm really pleased that these questions have come up and Michelle's answered that, because it is true. And I often talk about in my space how the toughest battle is actually convincing the science sector that this is a good thing to do. Not convincing everyone else, because it just seems like a no-brainer to everyone else, but the science sector is a tough battle. And one last question on the front here, the lovely last.
Hi, Andrew Barnes from Perpetual Guardian. The one thing I will say is I'm not a scientist, right? I used to have that thing, my science teacher used to write, when not daydreaming and sleeping soundly on my review. But I walked down to this university and this museum a while ago, and I bumped into Ian. And he walked me into this room, I think it was, and started waving his arms around and talking about the stars. And ultimately, I thought, if you can persuade somebody as unscientific as me to think that actually it would be a good idea to do that thing, then you've got something. And the reality is, it's not you've got to start somewhere. And I think I said to Ian, the thing that stuck in my mind was a thing from a British TV program called 7 Up. And it way back in the 60s, and there was a little boy in Yorkshire, and he said, I want to learn about the moon and things like that. And went on to be, I think, a professor somewhere in the university in America. We've just got to give the wonder, and we've just got to talk. And you guys all did that tonight. And that's what you need to do, because if you get one child coming out and saying, I want to do that, that's a win. And that's what we've got to start, one child at a time.
And can I just say, the word that comes to mind, we've been talking about communicators and engagement. Another word that comes to my mind is the word evangelist, right? You want to convert people to the view that science is a wonderful thing. And, there's that little bit of conversion that you just talked about.
Really good comment. I know we have to wrap up now, and you probably all have dinners and homes to go to, and it has been a fabulous event. And I think they don't know I'm going to ask them this, but I just want to run along the panel, and I want each panellist to use one word to summarise how they feel now after the discussion, like the single most important word to do with the future of science engagement for them. And it looks like we want to start with Peter down the far end.
Most of my single words are unprintable and unbroadcastable. To be honest, the thing, and it's not about this, it's not about this meeting, but the answer is anger. I'm getting angry. I'm getting angry about climate change denial. I'm getting angry about the way people talk about genetic modification. I'm getting angry about the way we talk about pesticides. And I'm beginning to wonder, all my work in science engagement, does it really make a difference if actually everything is controlled by people who have a financial interest in these things? So I'm angry. And you won't like me when I'm angry, though I don't turn green.
I have to think a little bit more. Hang on.
Well, I already picked my word, and that was evangelist, so I'm...
I want to say something like optimistic and enthused about the future, but really what I feel is tired. So I think tired might be the word. And I think that anyone who's doing science communication as part of, on top of their full day job, they probably also feel tired. That's a bit depressing though. So optimistic and tired.
I'm really hoping that with these last two words, we finish on a upbeat, peppy note. No pressure, Ian and Michelle, no pressure.
Well, seeing as everybody else has had a few words, there's a famous episode of The West Wing where the great president, it's all about 10-word answers. It's in the final debate. and you can't capture things in 10 words, is the argument. And I can't do it in 1 word, but I can do it in 3, quoting another president, and I think those 3 words are, yes, we can.
I can't do 1 word. I think the words that I would like us to walk out with thinking about are privilege. I think we're really privileged to be here. I feel really privileged to be an academic, and I think we need to remember that privilege space and try and reduce that. And my second word is accessibility. I think we have to make sure that what we do as people is make it as accessible to share with everybody as possible.
What a way to finish, thank you. I would like to thank all of you as the audience and anyone who's watching the live stream or been on social media for coming here into this space and this great debate and discussion today. And especially I would like to thank Otago Museum for putting this on. And of course, last but not least, I would like to thank these 5 amazing panellists. So Michelle, Ian, Hamish, Barbara and Peter, thank you so much for giving up your time and your thoughts.